the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm really good.
You know, there are a small handful of things that I can think of that would be like non-negotiables. I couldn't be married to you. One of them is that if you became a Democrat, I knew you were going to laugh, but like wholeheartedly, everything that you would stand for would go against all of my morals and values.
You know, I'm listening to a Civil War series right now, and it just amazes me how far we've come from the whole Democrat and Republican thing. But every time I'm listening to this book, it's just shocking to me how the perception of things is. But I absolutely agree. Like in a marriage, like you have to have communication. You have to be able to have those conversations when it comes to being able to differentiate political views or whatever it may be. And having those conversations is very important.
Yeah, and I brought that example up because it is so important to make sure that you know who you're marrying. And there could be times to where people change and maybe somebody decides to drink the Kool-Aid and that's why they wind up in a position like that. But the reason I'm sharing this is because I've been seeing in all of these police wives Facebook groups a topic that is on repeat, and it's insane to me. And so I've titled today's episode, When Your Spouse and Your Law Enforcement Career Clash. And I think I shared this with you where an anonymous poster said that she can't believe what her husband is being forced to do in support and to be able to help with all of these ICE immigration raids.
and we talked about this, and what's so crazy to really kind of dive into and look at as a situation as a whole. Like most people don't have a true understanding when it comes to local law enforcement and federal law enforcement and the differences that we enforce and we support and we build up with. And especially in California, like we have this dynamic to where we're going to go and help ICE officers if they're in a criminal struggle, meaning as if they're being assaulted or if they're involved in a pursuit, something to that nature. We're not going out and conducting ICE raids. We're not going out and doing those things like that because it's actually against state law for us to do so.
Yeah, and I'm imagining the female posing this to her husband and the amount of dissonance that could be created in that marriage as a result. I'm imagining him sharing whatever he had going on throughout the day as it relates to, you know, illegal people in our country, and her for feeling whatever reason the way that she does. It's funny because directly behind me, I was looking for a document and I came across my dad's congratulations on becoming a United States citizen letter, and it didn't dawn on me it was signed by Bill Clinton, and it was just like interesting to see, right, to have like the original copy of that. Like it's so cool, and it's something that my dad takes a great deal of pride with. But I think that regardless of which career that you're in, there are some signs that your career could be creating stress in your marriage. And one thing is that your partner might feel like they're competing with your job, and they might say things like, you're married to your shift and not to me. Or, you know, I'm thinking of one individual in particular to where that's what he has said ever since I met him, is that his wife is like, all she cares about is her job and her kids.
And you have to have that healthy balance between, you know, your work life and your home life. And we've talked about this numerous times, being able to have that separation. And ultimately, family should always come first. And you have to create that dynamic and really prioritize your family. But also when you're at work, you're making sure that the people you work with feel part of that family.
Totally. And something else too that I've seen people do, whether you're a cop, you're a nurse, you're a doctor, like name something, if you have overtime available, I've seen a lot of people who go to work so that they can avoid conflict at home.
And I can think of a handful of people who do that regularly, and you need to really deep dive on it and figure out what is going on. Why am I having to do this?
Another thing too is that your spouse could feel like they're like totally shut out from your emotional world. And let's go back to that example of the gentleman working with ICE in whatever capacity that was. And I'm thinking about how her expressing her disdain for wanting people in the country illegally, and him trying to show up and do his job and then come home and share his day with his wife, what that does in turn is it's going to make him pull back and not want to share those types of things with his wife. Perhaps making that increase to where he doesn't want to share other emotional elements of his life for the fear of judgment or the wrath of her, so to speak.
And a lot of it really comes down to not understanding the full spectrum of everything and having that communication line open, because you if you're being shut down at home and you're not able to share those experiences, and you start building up an unintentional like resentment or something that you're withholding that information, and it shouldn't be that way. And I think it comes down to is having those conversations and communicating with one another.
Something else too is that when you're so enthralled in work, or if your spouse feels like you are, then whenever there is a disagreement, a lot of the times you might just be touching the surface instead of kind of digging into the deeper issue. And when that happens, I feel like both of you could walk away from that conversation or disagreement feeling a little bit alone and like things are unresolved.
Yeah, you need to, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be one of those instances where it's not easy to talk about, but figuring out where the bottom line is for it, because there may be other things going on.
Yeah, there are ways to improve this, though. You know, I'm thinking about a conversation you and I had this weekend where you said, "What do you want me to do?" And in my head, it was like, I want you to come up with the way that you can resolve this thing. And sometimes we pour all of that. Like the things that need to be resolved onto our other partner. And when that happens, that too can create resentment, because then you're asking the other partner to take responsibility and to always fix the problems, even if they're problems that you should be fixing. And I think something important is to name the conflict and to don't like blame one or the other, and to start out with something like, I feel like we're drifting apart, or I feel like this thing really sucks. How can we fix that together?
Yeah, having those conversations, and I think ultimately it's Goggins. He has the extreme ownership, and being able to own what is going on and not try, because it's especially when you're in a close relationship, it's easy to deflect and to put it on to your spouse or to your loved ones to say, this is my problem, but now I'm making it your problem. Can you fix this for me? Yeah,
and in going along the same path of the gentleman who was working with ICE, if he had proposed something to his wife, and let's just say that he too didn't like what he was having to do, irregardless of what the details were, a lot of the times your partner or your spouse, they don't need the actual call log of whatever the thing was. So another thing could be something like, today was really hard because I had to watch a lot of things go down with some families, and it was really emotional, and it got me thinking about everything with our family, and I just love our family so much, and it was really emotional for me to be carrying everything that I did today. Like that would be a whole lot different than whether or not he was in support of what he was doing and how he shared things with his wife. So that's just an example of being able to kind of share that emotional cost of what went on throughout your day.
And I think too, as you were saying that, it made me think of is we have our individual and like values and integrity that we stand up for. And this brings me back to like 2020 when there was the forced mandates of the vaccine that was going out, and those dynamics that they were proposing and pushing out, and being able to educate yourself and being knowledgeable about what you firmly believe in and what you stand for, one way or another, being able to articulate that to your partner.
Yeah. And I think too that it's really important to know that it's okay to change your mind. And what I mean by that is, going back to the beginning here where I said, like, I would never be married to you if you were a Democrat. Like, if you held on to those values, like having abortion clinics at your rallies and so forth, I would not. And that would be a place to where I would have to say, you know what, I changed my mind. I want out of this. And so for the gentleman and the female having whatever disagreement they had as it related to his job, it's okay to ask for help whenever you need it. And it's okay to get real with perhaps things are changing, and to do everything that you can in order to make sure that your mental health and her mental health are totally protected at all times. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.